Welcome back to Tabletop Assault. I'm Ross and today I'm going to be looking at the Blood Angels Index Army rules, giving you about my first impressions of them. So this is looking at their rules, not their data sheets, that's for other videos, just looking at the rules themselves and seeing what they're like. Starting off, we're seeing one of the first Blood Angel detachments, and that is the Sons of Sanguinius. So what this is it's Adeptus Astartes, so you still have Oath of the Moment, which is fantastic because it is a great rule in itself if you want to focus down a particular unit, so it's going to prove very effective. And it appears that there's no sort of restrictions on using the Gladius Task Force. I thought there might be, but apparently not. So you could use Blood Angels as a Gladius Task Force if you wanted. Let me know if that is wrong. Now, what do you exchange? You exchange Gladius Task Force and Combat Doctrines for Sons of Sanguinius and the Red Thirst. Now, part of the Red Thirst is that you can't use other chapters. Now, I believe that is also the same for Space Marines. You have sort of your chapter rule, you can't use other characters from them. Anyway, what this gives you is if a Astartes unit charges, it gains +1 strength and attack with melee weapons. Now, that's a bit lackluster to the previous iteration of this. That was a lot more powerful, but it's still not bad in all essence. You know, +1 attack with, always prove useful, especially if you just got volumes and volumes of attacks. +1 strength, however, is a lot more situational, and in addition, where we're seeing a lot more higher toughness, it is going to be a rare occasion where it will prove useful, and when it does, that's great. But I think in the past, if it had been maybe +1 wound to wound or to damage, would have been absolutely fantastic and a bit more impactful throughout the game. +1 strength is always nice, but it's situational. Overall, I think this is fine. It's not one of the standout abilities that we've been shown so far, but it is still useful and really plays well into the Blood Angels playstyle. We then have the stratagems for the Sons of Sanguinius, starting with Angel Sacrifice. It's 1 command point, used when a character from your army is slain. Until the end of the battle, your units that target that unit that destroyed that character can reroll hits. I think this is okay, but it just seems like it overlaps with a few other things. Oath of the Moment, for if it's such a deadly unit that needs to be brought down, will kind of overlap with this. And Death Company, which are going to prove probably quite popular, reroll hits already. I can see the use if there is a particular problem unit and you want to have Oath of the Moment on somewhere else, but I just think this is probably not as impactful as we'd want it to be. We then have Armour of Contempt, which is until the end of the phase, worsen AP of weapons targeting unit by 1. Same from Gladius Task Force. I think this is going to be a common one we'll see throughout a lot of marine-based armies possibly. And useful for 1 command point. That extra bit of survivability will just make something harder to move. If you're looking at Death Star distraction units that your opponent is likely to remove, this is a good way to keep them alive. Aggressive Onslaught for 1 command point. Unit can consolidate 6 inches but must end in engagement range of 1 or more enemy units. So this one is a bit situational. You're essentially getting an extra 3-inch movement on your consolidation move. This could mean the difference between getting an enemy unit tied into the next combat. It does mean I think that they're likely to attack back because they will now be tied into combat. But it's going to be one of those situations where it is going to hamper your opponent extensively for the next turn. So that 3 inches might make a heck of a difference, you never know. Then we have Red Rampage, which is 1 command point. Activating the fight phase, unit gains lance and lethal hits. Very effective. I think this is going to be an absolute great stratagem. Lance, which is on the charge, you get the +1 to your wound rolls, is the main selling point. And lethal hits is also going to help because simply if you're lethal hitting, then you're not going to need to roll those wounds. So that's really, really nice to have as well. Massively plays into the Blood Angels playstyle. Few areas where you might find, in essence, I think the lethal hits might overlap in areas, but the lance one and lethal hits combined, when it's needed, is going to be great for a simple price of 1 command point. Only in death does duty end for 2 command points. Any models in the unit that are destroyed can fight back if they have not fought this phase already. And again, this is the same as the Gladius Task Force. It does require you to commit before seeing the results, so that might result in wasted command points. For instance, your opponent might not end up killing any of your models, thus you've spent command points for almost nothing. But it does allow a good bit of retribution. If you think this unit is going to die and they can actually hit back pretty effectively, then yeah, I think this one is well worth it. And when it comes to sort of units that are going to fight in the fight phase and die, I think the Blood Angels are going to do quite well there. Sure, you might have losses, but you're going to hit back pretty efficiently as well, possibly. Then we have Relentless Assault for 1 command point. Units that fell back can charge. Very useful. It's allowing you to choose your engagements as you see fit, and you should also reactivate your Red Thirst as well for +1 strength and attack, which is useful as well. Again, quite a good bargain for 1 command point. Next we move on to the Detachment's Enhancements, starting with Artisan of War, which gives the bearer 2+ armor save and weapon gains +1 to AP. So this boosts both the survivability and damage in 1 enhancement. And I feel this would be good on leaders that don't already have 2+ armor saves. You're looking at your Grav's Captain, your Captain Jump Pack. But I do feel that it's sort of benefiting both 2 areas, survivability and on damage. And usually when I have enhancements, I like them to focus in on one, have either the unit around it act as its protector while then it's hitting really hard, or maybe have the unit be a dueling champion and it might get stuck in a few combats on its own, but it's able to actually endure. This gives you a bit of both worlds, so I don't know how I feel on that one. Visage of Death, which is enemy units except monsters and vehicles have objective control stats when engagement range of this model, and it is the models themselves that have their characteristic. I've seen this on a few units before, correct me if I'm wrong. I just don't see that it's going to half and round down, so things that are 1 become 0 would be fantastic. That would be really, really good, but I just don't see that being the case. I think it's going to be highly situational, because in a lot of engagements on taking an objective, it's either one side's probably going to be massively outdoing the other one, maybe one just wins it right over and then it's not really going to matter. Maybe you're stuck with this, leader themselves and they just can't control the objective. It just seems situational to say the least. I think there is potential for this, but the situation has to be mighty right for it, and you don't need to worry about who controls the objective when you've smashed your opponent into oblivion. So there is that to bear in mind. Archangel Shards, which gives the bearer melee weapons. They gain Lance and Anti-Chaos 5+. Lance, I think, is the main selling point here. It just means on the charge you're getting +1 attack, +1 strength, +1 to your wound rolls, which is a very nice combination to be all told on a character. And the Anti-Chaos is fine. It means your critical wound rolls are going to be on a 5+. I would combine it with Thunderhammer for devastating wounds or on other sources that might give you reliable mortal wounds. It's not bad. I think with Thunderhammer that might be the key point for this one, and if you're fighting Chaos. Otherwise, Lance is a nice wee upgrade. And then Icon of the Angel, enemy units except monsters and vehicles who want to fall back must take a desperate escape test. If units bow shocked, it's -1 to the test. Again, this is very situational. There are going to be many times where your opponent wants to fall back, whether to get out of dodge or just move out of a unit so that they can then be targeted by fire or something. And then you might get a bit of retribution, a little bit of attack back on them. It gives your opponent something to calculate. But again, when your opponent maybe, if they're monsters or vehicles which are harder to destroy, it doesn't really affect them here. If it's anything less, then when they fall back, well, you can only hope that with Blood Angels, especially in combat, you're actually tearing your opponent apart. This is mitigating in terms of if you don't finish them off with one go, which does happen. And maybe your opponent might choose, well, I'm going to fall back, or maybe I'll just stay in combat because losing them to Desperate Escape is not quite worth it. And that is it for my thoughts, or my first impressions for the Blood Angels Index Army rules. Overall, I find it a little bit lackluster in areas. The stratagems and the enhancements didn't really strike me as such that when I saw other armies' forces, when I saw the Gladius Task Force, it just felt like something was missing. Something there just didn't quite sit well with me, and I thought they could have just been tweaked a little bit higher to do well. As for the Red Thirst, I think that's fine. The +1 attack is excellent. +1 strength, even in the previous edition when I saw +1 strength, I always went, this might be okay. It's always situational on the target. In a lot of cases it's going to play absolutely no effect, and in some cases it is going to play effect. It really depends on your engagement on that one. When it was +1 to your wound rolls, when you saw in previous in the previous edition, it was always impactful, and I always prefer rules that are always impactful. They don't need to even be better rules, they just need to be always impactful or something to play around. So with Blood Angels, I have to say I'm a little bit disappointed. There's just things I would tweak to update them in terms of their index rules that I think would really put them a step ahead. Overall, fine. Anyway, thanks again for listening. Please comment, share, like and subscribe, and we'll see you on another Tabletop Assault Battle Report.